mail you this recording.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
Got it.
remind me every day when I start the session
Mm-hmm.
to record this because I tend to forget.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
Right. Just mute yourselves. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Like just ping me once. Okay. Fine. So just introduce what is Java is first of all. You all know that we had a concept known as class and object. Class is a collection of variables and methods, or we call it as functions in C. This is the first point we have seen. An object is a real world entity, we say, and it's nothing but object is a memory block for a class, as there is no memory for a class, you can say. Oh, sorry, no one can see the screen, right? So everyone can see the screen, right? Fine. So class is a collection of variables and methods, and object is a memory block for a class, you can say. Okay. And there is a difference between C, C++ and Java. Those differences are nothing but C, C++ are platform dependent. Like, what do you mean by platform dependent? So if you're generating an application in Windows platform, you cannot execute the application in other platforms. Okay. And whereas Java is platform independent. So what is platform independent means? An application can be developed either in Windows, Linux or Mac OS, which can be executed in any other platform. That is platform independent. What's the reason is that C, C++ has a particular .exe file. Like whatever the output file it generates, it is .exe. So what .exe means? Ones and zeros. So this ones and zeros generated by a platform can't be understood by other platforms. That is the reason it's platform dependent. Whereas Java generates .class file. It does not generate .exe. It generates a .class file, which is nothing but a byte code. It's a separate language. And this bytecode is not understood by every machine. Like if you have Linux is there, Windows is there, Mac OS is there, it's a different machine code required for every platform. So this bytecode is not understood by any of the other platform. So we required a software known as JVM. So what is JVM? Java Virtual Machine. This Java Virtual Machine converts the bytecode to machine specific code. Means we need different JVMs for different OS. Like if you see here, JVM for Linux, we have JVM for Linux, we have JVM for Mac, we have JVM for Windows, Android, So different JVMs are there for different OS, operating system you can say. Okay, so that's the difference between these two. Now, any questions among this topic? If you have any
No.
doubts, you can just ask me now. Okay. Next, this platform dependent and independent is a major difference between the C++ and Java. And we have one more concept known as partially object oriented and fully object oriented. Like, what is the difference between partially oops and fully oops? Okay, so this partially oops is nothing but, suppose I'm writing a class person. In this person class I have void eat, and now if I'm writing a function outside the person, void show, if this class is written, there is no memory, so there is no memory for eat also. What we need an object, so we create an object for a person class, I can say. And when you write something outside the class, the memory is allocated directly, like void show, or we write void main, right? For these, memory is allocated directly outside a class. So this void display doesn't depend on object. Only the parts inside a class depends on object. So this is partially object oriented, you can say. This is nothing but partially oops. Example is what? C++. Okay. And coming to Java, if you write a class person, everything must be written inside a class itself. Like either it might be void eat or void main, anything. It must be written inside a class. That is, everything depends on object in Java. So it's known as fully oops. Example, Java. Okay. So this fully object oriented concept, you must follow it in Java. Like you can't write anything, any instruction or a variable declaration outside a class. Everything must be written inside a class. That is fully object oriented programming. Clear? Any doubts, anyone? Now, after this partially and fully, we have one more concept. Like, I'll give you the notes of these things, or I have the recording, I'll forward you the recording also. Is Java pure oops or not? So pure means what? From the start, everything must be an object. It it can be known as a pure object oriented, when everything from the starting represents an object. But in Java, we use int, float, long. These are data types which are being used in Java. And these data types are not objects. That is the reason Java is not pure oops, because of primitive data types. What do you mean by primitive? This int, float, long comes under the primitive data types. Okay. So if you see here, just say, is Java pure object oriented language? And what it's saying? So Java is not, because it supports primitive data types such as int, byte, long. all this. So it is not pure object oriented, but as we said, it's fully object oriented, means everything is converted to object. Like this, primitive data types are converted to objects by using wrapper class concept. So what is this wrapper class? I'll mention this in the future classes at the time of collection. Okay, so at the time of collection, what is wrapper class, it will be clear. Before that, what is the concept we are seeing? It's just that, is Java a pure object oriented programming system or not? And what's the answer? Because of the primitive data types, it's not a pure object oriented, and which are being converted to objects using wrapper class. Okay, now this is the third question we have covered.